Hi there, everyone. Good day to you. My name is Cameron, and you're listening to PodTax. Before we get right on into the show, I just want to take a moment to invite you to leave a like, leave a subscribe, share with your friends, go to Substack, and subscribe there too. That's how you support me. This channel, everything tax, everything the Great Fantasy Story on top of that. Speaking of which, if you do like fantasy, I have that as well. But that's beside the point. You can find all of that information in the show notes. But to support this channel, to continue helping me do what I do, I need your help. Can't do this alone, can't build this mogul empire of media, new media, all on my lonesome, as much as I would like to. And I suppose that at the end of the day, it is a group effort. You, me, and everyone in the middle. And together, through this process, we can create something that helps to make the world a little bit better. Even if it doesn't really feel like that at the moment. So, with that said, please do leave a like, please do share, please do all of those wonderfully beautiful things that you, the listener, can do for me. But enough of me waxing on the laurels of my content. Let's get right on into it. I still don't particularly care for the fact that I'm in search of a new intro music. You know, it's funny, when you're starting this out, you go to all the sites that are like, free use music, put anywhere, all that sort of stuff. And then when you upload your podcast to YouTube, it has the copyright claim tracker. And now someone who made that original clip that you would hear at the beginning of all this can use their righteous hammer of copyright to say, hey, this video has a restriction on it. Not that those videos are taken down, that I even need to do anything with them, which is good, but it's also very just inconvenient, especially when the algorithm likes to see that, and of course then all the shorts videos views drop, I think, because of that. At least that's what I perceive. I don't really know the algorithm that well on YouTube, so working through that. But in the meantime, if anyone knows anyone who would like to submit any sort of, content that I can use without limitations, I would be ever so grateful. Because I like that little soft transition at the front, but it doesn't really have that punch of an intro. And to be clear, I'm not, dissing on the nature of copyright in and of itself. It's a very important matter within our society. No one should plagiarize anyone, and I'm certainly not trying to here. What copyright claims mean on YouTube these days, as opposed to a strike, is just that people can track stuff, even if they say that, you're authorized to use it in all sorts of places. It still is like, hey, this person made a note on your video, So that's fun to deal with. And me not being an algorithm expert is not too familiar with the nature, so on and so forth, of what that exactly means in the grand scheme of it all. But I'm learning as this process goes about and continuing to make content, and I'm showing up here for you, dear listener. So that's fun. And that discourse about copyright aside, it is probably well to do for a discussion someday soon. I think that plagiarized things such as we are, no one should do that sort of thing. But in a world of AI, in a world of everything that is generated or in some sort of murky gray, it can be a very complex and disorienting issue, but nonetheless an important one. What isn't gray, though, depending on how you look at it, are the Epstein files. Oh my God, Cameron is talking the Epstein files. Yes. And namely, just because I was reading the news, and last night, which would have been Tuesday, House Republicans voted in the Rules Committee to not push forth some legislation, an amendment to the upcoming Genius Act, which is a cryptocurrency regulatory act for stablecoins. They voted against Ro Khanna's amendment to have the Department of Justice release the Epstein files to a publicly available website. The final vote was 5-6, and it's not going in. Here's the thing about that, is that there's irony to the notion that something unrelated to the bill is not going to be added, especially when the big, beautiful bill just passed. Do the Epstein files have anything to do at all with cryptocurrency stablecoins? No. But then again, omnibus bill packaging has been the backbone of present legislation and existing legislation since, well, a healthy while now. Virginia Fox, the chair of the Rules Committee, said, quote, "I think most of us believe what's appropriate will be released when it is time for the president to release it." The president, the very person that everyone is concerned about them being in the files, which, I mean, let's be real, the man was friends with Epstein. There's plenty of videos and photos of them hanging out together. He called him a good guy. All that sort of stuff. I mean, it's no stretch to even present a claim that it's likely and almost expected that the president is part of the Epstein files list, even if it's just a contact information book. I mean, there's numerous instances of them hanging out together, photos, videos, quotes about one another. Yeah, it's not a far hop, skip, and a jump to suggest some things. Especially when Elon Musk said that, yeah, he's on the list. So it's one of those things where there's common ground to want to understand, but we can also take a holistic look at it and try and ascertain the politics. You know, let's put ourselves in the Republican base of power. If the president is on the Epstein files, which is a very likely and almost expected scenario at this point, then that could, and hopefully would, shatter their power base as people feel betrayed, especially considering that that was like a big whole thing about his platform was that, oh yeah, we're going to release it and we're going to ensure that all these people on the left who have been on this list, like they're horrible people, and we're going to find them out. And well, you know, maybe you don't have to look very far, Mr. Trump, other than in the mirror yourself. Yeah, it's very interesting to see how the right wing is trying to deflect all of this too. It's one of those things where they're trying to downplay, oh, are everyone still interested in this? And that's backfiring beautifully, spectacularly so, direct into commentators and pundits and individuals of the administration alike. I think back to this clip, which was at a recent Turning Point USA conference in Tampa. This was July 11th.
Make some noise if you care about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Raise your hand if it matters a lot to you. Raise your hand. So every hand of 7,000 people.
Everybody cares.
Folks, those were Republicans. That was Charlie Kirk. This was Turning Point USA. This is about as far right in the weeds as you can possibly get. And all those people just said to one of the more prominent figures in right-wing media that they care. They care deeply about what's in the Epstein files. In fact, dare I say that that might be the uniting factor that binds the divide between Democrats and Republicans, is the fact that everyone wants to see justice for whoever is on that list. Alas, the one figure that everyone wants to care about and should care about being on that list lives in the White House and sits behind the resolute desk to do their job. But people still care. People want the truth. And if there is a sliver that we can take from this, is that if people want the truth, let's give them the truth. Because at the end of the day, well, you know, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's take up some sort of advisory position within the White House. And better yet, not just the White House, any person who's trying to organize a world government or government of a nation. There is an argument to be made that stability is accounted for insofar as how secure the leader is within a specific society. Of course, when we talk about stability, there's also the nuance that stability doesn't have any good or bad connotation attached to it. Stability has no morals, such as it is. I mean, for the longest time, Nazi Germany was, well, stable. Insofar as the uprising of the Nazi Party and everything. Like, the point there is just to make that stable, like North Korea, insofar as itself right now, is what we would consider stable, right? Like, there is no good or bad connotation to the word. Stable just means consistent. And so if you're looking to maintain consistency within a nation, if you're looking to maintain some semblance of order within a nation, then having your leader be put to the press and put to the irons and impeached and all that is going to lead to some measure of destabilization, particularly within the party that they are a part of. And so, from the opposite point of view, it's not hard to understand why people within the Republican Party would want to cover it up, because that scandal is going to be affiliated with them, especially since so many Republicans and GOP members and everyone else on the right has aligned themselves with everything Trump is doing. For better or for worse, everyone has hitched their wagon to the man. And maybe that cost is coming to bear itself out now with this scandal. And maybe that's why all these different people will go to such lengths to protect him, because it's not about protecting him, it's about protecting their own interest and ability to get reelected. You're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation if you're a Republican right now. Because if you aren't on the side of Donald Trump and his friends, he can primary you. He has the resources, he has the funds, he has the allies to be able to knock you out of office. Now, with Elon Musk's New America Party, you might stand a chance to actually be funded by someone who could meet those battles with funding and the like. Alas, I don't really see that happening. And so if you are a Republican, if you are someone who is wanting to go against the grain, against the popularity, if you want to get out in front of this and distance yourself from this scandal, then you're also doing so at the risk of putting your own career on the chopping block. But if you go along with the president, if you stand on party line, if you adhere to the code and creed of the GOP, then you're also administering yourself to whatever happens as an outcome of this. You will be associated with the vote that you make. And that, in its part, is why the Democrats are trying to put forth all of these different measures to have these files released. Because now there's a record of people voting, no, I don't want to release those files. And to some of their credits, this was only a 5-6 passage. There was only a 1 vote difference between whether or not this would have been included in the preliminary vote that would have been incorporated into the Genius Act. Representative Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, was one of those people who voted with the 4 Democrats on the panel. Chip Roy out of Texas didn't vote either. So it was by the slimmest of margins, and perhaps that was on purpose. Likely, yes. I mean, it's still a game, and the people who didn't vote or crossed the line had to do so because they were in districts or in places that had striated representation, where there would be some sort of more tangible outcome on their elections within the next primary season. But all of that is beside the point, because now there is a vote on the table that said these people voted against releasing the Epstein files. And now the Democrats can go on and say, well, what can it hurt? You know, it's funny too, where people on the right wing will be saying something like, well, what are you going to do when, the Clintons are on the Epstein files? What if Obama? And it's like, not claiming that any of those people are or aren't, but it's just like, well, what if all these left-wing individuals and prominent, what if George Soros? My God, what if George Soros is on the Epstein list? Good. Put them all in fucking jail. Like, this isn't hard, folks. Like, I think that's the unifying thing. Truth and justice for all. Truth and justice for all. That is the American way. And by God, if maybe that's the thing that is going to reduce the amount of polarization in our society. Maybe this scandal, maybe this is the unifying force that is going to start to bring us all back together again. That's super tongue-in-cheek. It very likely will not happen that way, if it happens at all, if these files are or aren't released. But it's funny to me to think that, like, the argument is claiming, well, you just don't want someone from your side of the aisle to be, found guilty. Well, no, I would very much just like to see everyone who's on the list prosecuted. Especially, it's one thing to be on the contact list, but if that leads to an investigation, that leads to the unraveling of the fact that these people committed heinous atrocities against trafficked individuals, then yeah, burn them at the stake, every single one of them. My goodness, like, this is not hard. And I think that, there's a commonality between Democrats and Republicans to agree on that. And it's clear. Look at that Turning Point clip. It's clear that people absolutely care about all of this, regardless of party line. Because no one wants a pedophile or, a sex trafficker or someone who's participated in that as part of not only our administration, but being part of our society and being exposed to our own social contract. I think that what gets lost in all this is that this is not as complicated as it needs to be. And while we can play devil's advocate and vouch for continued stability, that nonetheless is not what we are as a nation. We are a nation that thrives on the instability, that thrives on the debate and the conflict. That's who we are supposed to be. That's what our social contract demands in order to make this a better place. That's what Congress is supposed to serve as. That's what healthy debate with our neighbors at the coffee shop is supposed to do. And I think as we come around more and more towards having these difficult conversations within one another, growing from them, holding space and validating where people are at and meeting them in the middle, then maybe we can start to make these difficult decisions as to whether or not that, is there going to be a vacuum left by the spaces that people who are guilty fill? Yes, but we can fill them with better people who aren't guilty of such crimes. Like, damn it all, folks. Like, when did we become a society where it was more important to uphold said stability than bring justice to the people who have gotten ill-gotten gains and reached some sort of pinnacle while being scumbags? I think that was the thing that pissed me off the most during the running of the first Trump administration. It's like, what most people continue to not consider is that there would be not so much contention and fight from the Democrats and the left wing against the Trump administration, were it be, or at least just the administration, if the Republican administration, there would not be such fight against them if it was literally just anyone else. But this president has proven time and time again that he's willfully ignorant, perversely intolerant, not very thoughtful to the complexities of a situation, and willing to shred away any sense of sustainability in our society for meager gains for him and his friends. Would we feel that way if Mitt Romney was in office? I don't think so. I think what everyone wants at the end of the day is to just get back to a place where you don't feel like the world is collapsing regardless of who's in office. No one on the Democrat side liked when Bush was in office, but it was fine. He did some shitty things, but he did, it was one of those things where there's a lot of perspective now. But I think when Obama was running against McCain, the world would have been fine if McCain was in office. No one would have kept themselves awake at night if Mitt Romney was running the show. I think that's what people are looking for. It's not the fact that it's just why are you so against, you're against me because I'm a Republican. No, I'm against the man who's clearly just in it for his own interest, who has a power base that is effectively his own personal army, that he pardoned violent offenders who stormed the Capitol. The person who, here's the thing, I don't think that people really have realized this yet, but within the Big Beautiful Bill, ICE is now funded more than the military of other nations. ICE has more funding than Israel's Defense Force. ICE has more funding than the IDP. And who do you think they're loyal to? Yeah, sitting with that one is certainly a nightmare. But let's not lose the plot here. The Epstein files are real, and they carry a lot of names on them, and maybe they might just be a contact list. But what we know went on that island is some horrific shit. And everyone who is involved, regardless of party, regardless of affiliation, or service to society even, if they were part of it, put them at the stake. Let justice be done unto them for their crimes they have committed, not just against the nations that they are a part of, but against basic humanity for that vile shit that they did down there. And if President Trump is on that list, well, let him be part of that group. It's that simple. Because it's just, we're left without words. Because it should be that simple. And I guess that comes back to the main point of all of this, is that it really should be this simple. If people want it, and people do, release the fucking files. Stability be damned. We'll figure it out as a nation. We always have. And the reason that people aren't is because the power base that exists is hitching their wagon to somebody because they feel like that person has all the power. But with some cracks in the seams here, people are starting to realize that when people at one of the most right-wing themed conferences in the nation all stand up and say, we want this information, they'd be like, oh, we might not be on the right side of this. So I'm very curious to see what will happen as Republicans to continue to try and find where they lie on this specific issue. But I feel good today, not just as someone who lives in society, but in the fact that it's I can actually agree with some Republicans on something. Release the Epstein files. Let's see what's in them, and let's make sure that everyone who is part of them gets their comeuppance. It's long overdue. So, with that, I think we'll end a little bit shorter today, because it doesn't need to extend beyond that. It's a very simple conversation we need to have. Do the Epstein files exist as we expect them to? Yes. Let's figure out who's on them, shall we? And investigate those individuals. Till next time, folks, my name is Cameron. It is a pleasure to host you here on my podcast. Still never going to figure that out. It's been a pleasure to host you here on my podcast, Podtax. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.